So a couple of weeks ago, we counted down the top 10 changes that film adaptations made to great plays that did them a major disservice. But where did they make changes that might actually have made sense? I'll show it to you in this video. Welcome back to my channel, everybody. Now, to give you an idea of why I think this list will be of interest to my fellow theater fanatics, let me begin by sharing with you a little story about how grateful I was a couple of years ago when I got to cross one of my long-time dream roles off of my bucket list as an actor. And especially for the way that I was able to play Colonel Jessup with a recently revised script for A Few Good Men that Aaron Sorkin had come up with, incorporating many of the changes that came about from letting great actors like Cruise and Nicholson improvise and improve his script as they worked on it. For years after the film was a hit, many of you may have gone to see it at your local community theater and been disappointed to see that the dialogue of the final confrontation was significantly different. Heck, it doesn't even contain the classic,
"You can't handle the truth."
Originally, Kaffee does indeed get Jessup to say he ordered the code red.
I think he wants to say it.
But in the play, that meant getting him to take a good look at the two defendants, asking them, are they criminals or are they heroes? And when forced to acknowledge that they're the latter, he just can't stand to see them thrown under the bus and says he ordered the code red. It's dramatic, of course, but nothing compared to the scene where they're screaming at each other's throats, and in the situation where it just makes him shout it out in his rage. The exchange was originally something like, "Come on, say it. You ordered the code red." "I ordered the code red." Nothing compared to,
"Did you order the code red?" "You're goddamn right I did!"
Now, as many of the theater people watching probably know, copyright laws not only require your local theaters to pay royalties to the writer or to his or her estate, they also require their permission before a single word of the script is changed. So I think it's great that Aaron Sorkin resisted the temptation to do what so many other writers would have done, getting pissed off that actors dared to change anything that he wrote and insisting that the development of his play ended the day that it first opened. But unfortunately, too many other writers have not followed his lead, and there are many plays that might also take a higher spot on my bucket list if it weren't for knowing that doing it would involve doing a version where the script, at least in one part, is significantly inferior to the one we've seen in a film. So what are they? Counting down the top 10 movie version improvements. Here we go. Starting off, we have a very minor dialogue complaint, but it is worth noting because it's a great lesson for writers and a textbook example of why dialogue is a lot more interesting when it's filled with subtext and where you suggest things rather than flat out saying them. In the film, when Mike and Carlino are given the job of recovering the doll that Rode has used to smuggle drugs into the country, they ask him,
"What's in it?"
And he responds by offering them way more money than they were expecting. When asked why so generous, Rode says,
"So you don't ask what's in the doll? So now we know what's in the doll."
Okay, it's not exactly poetry rivaling Shakespeare, but it's sure a much more interesting way to provide that exposition to the audience than the way it's done in the play. Mike asks, and Rote tells him. Kiss Me, Kate. Great musical and an underrated film adaptation. There are many differences in the film version that make it worse, but one scene's exclusion from the play is definitely a disappointment to me every time I see it in the theater. The plot line about why the gangsters have a hold over Fred because of the money that Lois's boyfriend signed his name to the IOU for helps add to the ongoing conflict, including between him and Lily, given the way he uses that gambling debt as a way to get the gangsters to help him in forcing Lily to keep performing. But I get a kick out of that scene where the truth starts to come out and Fred finds his unique way of shutting her up.
It took really a great man to forgive another man for signing his...
And of course, Lily walks in at that moment to see that. Okay, maybe it's not that funny, but definitely enough in my opinion that I want to see it when I see this on stage. Both the stage and the film version of this psychological drama of how she confronts her former abuser are outstanding, especially the dramatic reveal about how she's always been 99% sure that he's the one that did it, but wanted to get him to confess to it in a way that would get rid of the remaining 1% of doubt in the way that he confesses. In the play, she tells him afterwards that that's what she successfully did, by making him repeat the details of everything he did to her, but deliberately making minor errors in her version to see if he would correct them when he repeats it back as his confession. But so much more dramatic in the film version, where we see that happening.
Wires, they tied you with wires.
What did you tell him, Gerardo?
I didn't tell him anything.
I know you prepared him. I knew you were going to, so I lied to you. What did you tell him?
Ropes.
Understand? You didn't tell him. So how did he know it was really wires? Because it was wires.
Both are great, but this is even better. Both the stage and the film versions of this classic close with very clever lines after the killer's wife finds out about the other woman.
I shall not be tried for perjury. I shall be tried for... murder.
Then when she does it, the final line is,
Guilty, my lord.
okay, not bad, but nothing compared to the film adaptation. She stabs him, then somebody else comes in and says,
What happened? She killed him.
Killed him. She executed him.
much better seeing him savoring the irony of how justice was ultimately done to the man she just helped get away with murder. Both the stage and the film version of Inherit the Wind close with Drummond making his symbolic gesture of how he can respect both Darwin and Christianity. It's historically inaccurate, as in reality, Clarence Darrow, whom the character was based on, was really just as outspokenly atheist as H.L. Mencken, whom Hornbeck was based on. But that's not my complaint here. From a dramatic standpoint, it was a good statement for the show to close on, and the film delves into it a lot deeper. In both versions, when Hornbeck can't believe Drummond can actually have any respect for Brady after all of this, he calls him a hypocrite and the atheist who believes in God. But then in the play, he exits on that line. But in the movie, the scene between the two of them goes on longer, really delving into an analysis of how Hornbeck's intolerance for people who do believe is just as bad, in Drummond's view, as the religious right's intolerance for those who don't. Again, portraying Clarence Darrow as holding that view is historically inaccurate, but dramatically it was a good choice as a way to illustrate a major theme, and the film version just goes further and does it better. In the movie version of Amadeus, the theme of Salieri's jealousy of Mozart is introduced so well with that great scene where he demonstrates to the priest the inability of anybody to remember any of his works that were once thought to be so good. But then,
What about this one? I'm sorry, I didn't know you wrote that. I didn't. That was Mozart.
now many will disagree with me on this, because the play is of a very different structure, better suited to the stage, where Salieri in the present speaks in long monologues, interrupted by flashbacks in which other actors join in. But I really believe there's no reason why this structure still couldn't have accommodated having the priest enter to do that scene, and I'm disappointed that it's not there. The film version of David Mamet's Pulitzer Prize-winning masterpiece added Alec Baldwin's character to provide the exposition on just what the stakes were in this sales contest.
As you all know, first prize is a Cadillac Eldorado. Anybody want to see second prize? Second prize is a set of steak knives. Third prize is you're fired.
Now, as we already saw in the Wait Until Dark example, it is a valid criticism that the least creative way to get in exposition is this method of just flat out saying it, whereas good writers find ways to disguise their exposition, or more often, to realize that the best way to get pieces of exposition in is not to, because there are certain things that the audience doesn't need to know. And many people will disagree with me here, but I don't think this is one of them. I think it is important for the audience to know just what the stakes are here, and maybe they could have found a less direct way to let the audience know. Including Baldwin's character in the play might have worked, or I'm sure it would have worked to have just given those lines to Kevin Spacey's character. And maybe the film didn't choose the most creative way to get that exposition in, but the fact that they did it at all makes it, in my opinion, an improvement. I complained in the previous video about film versions that insisted on changing to happy endings when it wasn't called for. But in Little Shop of Horrors, I really think it was. A happy ending definitely did not fit for Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, but the truly bizarre ending here, where the killer plants win and end up taking over the world, just doesn't fit with a goofy comedic tone that we've been experiencing up until that point. Now, there are other videos about how the producers of the movie didn't like the ending and demanded that it be changed, and most of them seem to be complaining about it. But here, I have to agree with that decision. In both the stage and the film versions of Annie, the signature number is something that Annie teaches FDR when she comes to visit him in the White House. Yeah, teaching a happy song to somebody to save the day is admittedly a silly concept, however you portray it. But it's a convention of musical theater that its fans can and should accept. The absolute corniness of the scene in the play, on the other hand, where she teaches it to FDR's cabinet, and that's what inspires them to come up with the idea for the New Deal, is just beyond the pale. Now, I'm sure my Republican friend who played Harold Ickes in the version that I was in at the Attic Theater had a field day in portraying FDR's brain trust as a bunch of total idiots. But I have to object to it dramatically and not just politically. The film version, where she's meeting only with Franklin and Eleanor, not only seems more appropriate for the stage, where it's harder to stage productions with lots of actors, but it seems a lot more real and genuine when the uplifting message of the song is presented as what gets the Republican warbucks to stop his partisan opposition to the New Deal, not what gets FDR to think it up in the first place. The play version of 12 Angry Men, which was originally a teleplay, is so commonly performed in local theaters, and sometimes I think about auditioning, but then when I remember that there's not one, but two inexcusable changes in the play version that would drive me crazy every performance, I just can't. First of all, there's the great scene where Ed Begley goes into his racist rant, and one by one, everybody walks away and turns their back on him, refusing to listen. On stage, the simple visual of that opportunity to use the whole stage could make it even more dramatic visually. But then at the end, juror number 4, ashamed now to be one of only 2 other jurors on the same side as this racist, lets him know, in no uncertain terms, that he's through listening to him. But in the published version of the play, it's a long bit explaining how he's had enough. Again, exposition not disguised at all, threatening violence if he doesn't shut his filthy mouth, etc., etc. In the film, it's simply Begley looking to the one person still sitting at the table.
Listen to me. Listen to me. I have. Now sit down and don't open your mouth again.
But even more maddening for me is the final dramatic push that gets juror number 3 to cave. The drama is gut-wrenching when Lee J. Cobb looks at the picture of his son and breaks down hysterically. I don't know how anyone can think that it's better the way the play does it. Come on, you have to say it. Okay, fine, not guilty. It's just like the example with A Few Good Men that we looked at the beginning of this video, especially considering that on stage you're expected to be bigger than on screen, where the camera picks up everything and blows it up hundreds of times. It's baffling how anyone directing for the stage would want to shy away from staging an outburst and prefer, say it, okay, I ordered the code red, or okay, not guilty. How can you think that is better than,
Did you order the code red? You're goddamn right I did!
or breaking down in tears? Maybe it's the feeling that the audience won't get what it was that caused juror number 3 to break down, since on stage you can't do an extreme close-up of the picture, but come on, he gets that picture out and talks about his son throughout the whole show. There is no way the audience is not smart enough to know what he is looking at whenever he gets it out, and why it causes that kind of emotion in him. So what do you think? Do you disagree with any of these? Think that the play is best as it is? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to smash that like and subscribe for more theater content here on my channel. I'll see you all real soon. Bye now.